A soup fumes with cut fingers among the ingredients. A lady reassures Shoyuta not to worry, promising it will be delicious if he waits. Shoyuta sits nearby, silently watching her effort, yet his face is heavy with sorrow. The story begins a few days earlier, when Shuta's mother calls him for breakfast. Shoyuta wakes up early, rubbing his hair, and everything is as normal. He then opens the drawer and picks a letter. The sight of it stirs a faint unease within him. A moment later, his mother opens the door to his room, reminding him that she's leaving for work and asking him to wash the dishes and keep the door locked. Shoyuta nods. His gaze then falls on his phone, where a new message has appeared. After locking the house, he reads SMS, first game of eating friends. Shoyuta strangely stares and assumes it's some kind of prank and puts the phone away. At the bus stop, he waits quietly until a familiar voice greets someone named Yugaku. A few girls are gathered around Yugaku, cheerfully saying good morning. Yugaku waves back, then walks over and stands beside Shoyuta, asking if everything is fine. Shoyuta casually mentions that the girls behind him want to talk to him. As they walk, Yugaku teases that Shoyuta has become quite popular in school. He then asks Shoyuta if anyone else would even matter when he has someone he likes. Yugaku then asks if he gave the letter to Koharu. Shoyuta hits him with a bag for his loud voice. Shoyuta shrugs and says he's waiting for the right time to confess his feelings to someone. Yugaku grins and says there's no better time than now. Just then, a girl with long hair named Koharu appears from behind. She offers a greeting with a smile. Shoyuta freezes for a moment before managing to return her greeting. Another girl, Endo Yugaku, calls out to Koharu to wait. She greets both Shoyuta and Yugaku before they all continue toward school together. As they walk, Yugaku warns Shoyuta that if he doesn't act soon, someone else might win Koharu's heart first. They enter classroom 1A. The blackboard already displays the day's lesson topic, country culture. The teacher asks Koharu to stand and confirm whether she holds the controversy, and she admits that she does. Shoyuta, watching her, reflects that ever since the OSA high school admission ceremony, he has been thinking about her. At that moment, the teacher notices him and calls out, asking if he is paying attention. Shuta's classmates also notice his gaze fixed on Koharu. The teacher remarks that while Shoyuta may be sincere, his focus on the sensei is a problem. He then opens his laptop and explains that, since there is some spare time, he will show the class pictures that Yoshi took last summer. The images are of insects. Now Ijima reacts fearfully. Rumi comments that the pictures were not taken that long ago, and Najima confirms this. Another student, Sakuraba Masaya, asks now if she is afraid of bugs and compares it to eating dogs in China. The teacher adds that in Cambodia, eating insects is considered normal. Some of the girls whisper that they feel bad for anyone eating insects, insisting it would definitely not taste good. Meanwhile, Himamaya Yua remains absorbed in her reading. A girl casually says there's no need to worry about what they're eating, as it's likely delicious. She recalls eating a lobster and a bee at her grandmother's house, finding both surprisingly tasty. Hiroki Tanabe smirks, saying it's no surprise Yuki, a merchant's daughter, is so bold. He notes that insects are highly nutritious. A few students around them laugh, teasingly urging Yugaku to wait before saying more. Then Yua interrupts and tells Endo can eat insects. With a faint smile, now continues, asking what they'd like her to bring next time she catches some, perhaps a cockroach or a centipede. Her mockery makes Yua fall silent, looking uneasy. Shoyuta senses the discomfort. He glances toward Koharu's friends, noticing their uneasy expressions. A wave of frustration rises within him. He suddenly stands up declaring that enough is enough. One girl warns him that he's inviting trouble, but Noah laughingly asks Shoyuta whether he, too, happens to be an insect eater. Shoyuta looks down, and Yugaku comments that if he were on a desert island, he could eat anything. Shoyuta smiles faintly at him, then suddenly turns toward the girls and asks angrily if they would eat insects if their lives depended on it. The girls stare at him in surprise. From the back, a voice interrupts. A young man wearing glasses, Ayato, asks if they could eat their friends if their own lives were at stake. The entire class turns to look at him, stunned, and whispers break out as students glance nervously at their phones. Fear spreads quickly about receiving a strange message. The teacher notices the shift in atmosphere and abruptly ends the lesson, saying the subject has changed. He waves his hand and remarks that fried crickets taste the same as fried potatoes. Koharu checks her phone and appears worried. At lunch, Yugaku tells Shoyuta it was expected to feel strange after his comment about fried crickets. Shoyuta asks him to stop, but Yugaku adds that it's time he worked on his love life. Shoyuta insists it's not so simple. Taking a sip of juice, he glances at Koharu and tells Yugaku that he has no idea. Inwardly, Shoyuta reflects that if Koharu rejected him, it would at least be a safe rejection. Koharu approaches and asks Shoyuta if he would mind accompanying her to the roof. Unsure, he hesitates. She adds that there is something she wants to discuss privately. Shoyuta nervously asks if it is about him, and Koharu confirms. Looking once at Yugaku, Shoyuta stands and leaves with her. Their classmates watch curiously. As they approach the stairs, Koharu asks if he is alright. Shoyuta thinks to himself that she has no idea how popular she really is. She climbs the steps first, with Shoyuta following behind, a letter hidden in his pocket. On the roof, couples are sitting together in small groups, talking. Nervous, Shoyuta gestures for Koharu to sit apart with him. Koharu asks if he also received the message. Shoyuta wonders if this is the reason she brought him here. Looking down, he replies calmly that he did, adding that he is investigating the culprit with Yugaku. Koharu asks him to show the message. With his eyes closed, Shoyuta answers that it isn't necessary since they all received the same one. Koharu disagrees, insisting hers is different. She shows him her phone. Her status is marked as infected, and the donor listed is Amano Shoyuta. Shocked to see his own name, he looks down. Koharu checks his phone and reads he is marked as healthy. She thanks him quietly, apologizing for bothering him. Shoyuta asks if that was all she wanted to talk about, and she nods before standing to leave. Shoyuta watches her go and thinks to himself that if he lets this opportunity slip, there may never be another. He pulls the letter from his pocket, calls her back, and hands it to her, saying it contains his feelings. She takes it, and he tells her that if it is a nuisance, she may throw it away. Koharu opens the letter, reads it, and her face turns red. Shoyuta is stunned to see her blush. He tells her she can answer whenever she wants. Suddenly, her head begins to swell. Still holding the letter, blood trickles down as her head enlarges into a grotesque, balloon-like shape. Shoyuta freezes in terror. In the next instant, her head bursts violently, and she collapses lifelessly to the ground. Horrified, Shoyuta picks up a blood-stained fragment that reads, "I like you." At that moment, his phone vibrates. A message from the game flashes at exactly 1 p.m. It reads, "Seki Koharu is dead." This is one of the 40 deaths. All of Koharu's classmates feel threatened after seeing the image of her lifeless body. Even Shoyuta mutters in shock, wondering what is happening. The next morning at assembly, the principal declares Koharu's death an accident, and later, their teacher asks the class to stay calm despite their grief. He warns the students not to be influenced by malicious prank emails. Shoyuta receives a new notification on his phone confirming his healthy condition. His expression darkens. He quietly blames himself for Koharu's death, thinking that if he hadn't gone to the roof or given her the letter, she might still be alive. Yugaku tries to calm him, but Shuta's guilt only grows deeper. Yugaku suggests Koharu's death might be tied to the Friends Eater game, and as Shoyuta listens, he adds that if the game's predictions are true, another infected person will be chosen today. Yugaku recalls Koharu saying she was the only infected in Class 1A and that only the infected know their donor's name. Shoyuta realizes another death is coming, while Yugaku reasons that if it's a game, there must be a way to survive or clear it. He speculates that for an infected person to save themselves, they must ingest the donor's vaccine. Shoyuta quietly admires Yugaku's ability to stay calm and analyze the situation. He calls Yugaku and decides to act together. Yugaku confirms. Shoyuta goes onside to question the boys, leaving the girls' side to Yugaku. After a short gossiping with both genders, Yugaku calls out that he has found their target. Together they approach Yuki, a girl from the literary club who used to work closely with Koharu and Indu. Yuki shows them her phone, trembling as she reveals a message from the game announcing her infection. Shoyuta urges her to stay calm and listen carefully. He explains that what she does next might decide whether she lives or dies. After thinking it over, Yuki says she might survive with the donor's vaccine, but they first need to find the donor's hair. Shoyuta checks the data and identifies Yuki's donor, now Ijima. Now, known for her flashy look and sharp tongue, dominates the class with her confidence and pride. Shoyuta tells Yugaku that he'll approach her directly. When he does, Now looks unimpressed and says she doesn't understand what he means. Her friends, including Najima, mock Shoyuta when he asks for her hair. Deciding to be honest, he explains that she is the only person who can provide the vaccine Yuki needs to survive. Shoyuta pleads with her again. Now whispers that she doesn't believe a word he says. Yugaku sits before her, speaking softly that it's no prank. This game actually influences and decides life and death, and this time he is also asking her help. Then Yugaku lowers his head but now asks him to stand up, and adds quietly that if he becomes infected next and she turns out to be her donor, she will give him the vaccine at every cost. Now hands over strands of her hair. Shoyuta says they got them but asks how Yuki should take them. Yugaku, remaining calm, replies that the only thing she can do is eat them. Shoyuta hesitates, wondering if it is even possible to digest hair. Yugaku answers no. But before either of them can respond further, Yuki firmly declares that she will eat it, because her life depends on it. Both boys watch her, surprised by her mental strength. Yuki's eyes, filled with tears, says that if Koharu were still alive, she would not doubt Shoyuta and would believe in him. Hearing this, Shoyuta quietly calls her name. He realizes Yuki's pain over Koharu's death runs even deeper than his own. Then they cut the hair into smaller pieces to make it easier to swallow. Yugaku offers her tea and some oblates to help. Yuki looks at Shoyuta and gently tells him that he is a kind person, and now she understands why Koharu liked him. Shoyuta is stunned, no one has ever told him this before. Yuki wonders aloud that Koharu never mentioned it to him and explains that she was certain Koharu planned to confess her feelings when she and Shoyuta went to the rooftop that day. Koharu was often misunderstood but was truly the most innocent of all. Yuki then recalls the small cat they found during lunch one day. The animal had been abandoned, and at first, everyone spoiled it. But when it came time to care for it properly, most wanted to hand it over to a health center. Only Shoyuta insisted on finding a new family. Because of that kindness, Koharu began to admire him deeply. Shoyuta listens in silence and replies softly that he never knew. Yugaku returns as Yuki prepares to drink the tea. Shoyuta tries to refocus on the situation in front of him. Yuki swallows it. Yugaku checks the time and mentions that the last results appeared at exactly 1 p.m. Shoyuta thinks this time, the vaccine was only hair, something easy to obtain, but during Koharu's turn, it was the duodenum. Fear strikes him as he imagines future rounds, wondering what would happen if the next vaccine turned out to be someone's heart. The thought of someone being forced to eat their friend's heart for survival horrifies him. Suddenly, Yuki's phone rings with a new notification. She watches and notices her condition changes from infected to healthy. Relief floods the room. Yugaku jumps with excitement and even climbs onto Shuta's shoulders in celebration. Yuki thanks them both, and Shoyuta replies that this victory belongs to everyone. News of their success spreads quickly, surprising their classmates. Yuki thanks Nao for her help, but Nao responds sharply, telling her to thank Yugaku instead. The class starts chatting again when, without warning, everyone's phones ring simultaneously. Shoyuta assumes it's another result announcement. When he checks the screen, both he and Yugaku are stunned. The total number of deaths has increased, and now 6 people are listed as deceased. Shoyuta stares in disbelief, saying they had just cleared the game. A loud crash interrupts him as a frustrated boy kicks a desk and demands to know who is playing this cruel prank. Panic spreads when a girl says that Aoi hasn't replied to her text since morning, and another confirms it. Yugaku quickly observes that all 6 names on the death list belong to students who are absent today. Trying to stay calm, Yugaku urges cooperation, telling them to visit absent students' homes and pairing everyone by neighborhood. Turning to Shoyuta, he assigns him Inami's house and asks him to send a message once he learns anything. Shoyuta runs through the streets, his heart pounding. He cannot believe that 6 people could die at the same time. When he finally reaches Inami's neighborhood, he sits abruptly, his breath shaking. Police tape seals the area, officers guard Inami's house, and chill hits him as he realizes the game's horror isn't over yet. Shoyuta tells Yugaku that Inami and 5 others were found dead despite being marked healthy, shocking Yugaku as Shoyuta explains the game kills anyone who skips school. He then asks Yugaku to come to his apartment so they can think things through together. At Shuta's apartment, they note the confirmed rules. Participants are healthy or infected. Status emails arrive at 5 a.m., deaths at 1 p.m., and the infected die if they miss their vaccine or stay home. Shoyuta asks him to share the info, and Yugaku says it's best if everyone gathers in one group to avoid confusion. Shoyuta takes a deep breath and says that if the game continues tomorrow, they won't know until morning. Yugaku suggests they go outside and take a short break. Both head to the tire park and stop beneath an old, tall tree. Yugaku recalls that Shoyuta was the first person to climb to the top of it. Shoyuta smiles and asks when that happened. Yugaku admits that he's glad to see Shoyuta smiling again since, after Koharu's death, he had been constantly depressed. Shoyuta tells him that when he was on the rooftop with Koharu, he thought she wanted to discuss the mystery behind the game, but she had remained quiet and calm. Now he believes that if solving this mystery is the only way to give her peace, he's ready to do it. Yugaku looks at him for a moment, then smiles faintly. Yugaku swings gently and says that, speaking honestly, he has been feeling low himself. Shoyuta scratches his head and says he understands, teasing that the boy who always clung to him turned out to be a perfect person. Yugaku laughs, saying Shoyuta hasn't changed, but Shoyuta replies he's still 16 and ordinary. Yugaku smiles, admitting Shuta's actually amazing. Then he extends his hand and says they will end this game together, and their duo will be reborn. They shake hands firmly, sealing their resolve. The next morning, Shoyuta checks his phone and feels relieved to see his condition is still healthy. Yet the relief is bitter, because it also means another classmate will die. Meeting Yugaku at school, he says this makes it the third day in a row. Yugaku then shows his phone and reveals that he is the one infected. Shoyuta freezes in shock and asks if he's sure. Yugaku shows him a small tooth and explains that he already prepared a vaccine. He got it from a girl in the women's basketball club who recently had her teeth corrected. At first, Shoyuta is surprised, then relieved. Now suddenly asks if the game targets only their class and whether vaccines from outsiders would work. Shoyuta reveals Yugaku's donor is a girl from Sakurazaka High, but Yugaku calms him, saying Nao's question is valid and they must test it to know for sure. Nao then steps forward and offers Yugaku one of her own teeth. Both boys look at her in disbelief. She reminds Yugaku of his earlier promise, saying doing nothing now would make her a failure as a woman. Nao had sworn that she would give Yugaku her vaccine no matter what. Yugaku thanks her sincerely but insists that it should be a last resort. They still have time left, he says. He also acknowledges that Nao was right, vaccines from non-participants may not work. Looking at the tooth in his hand, Yugaku says this is their chance to find out. He puts the tooth into his mouth and swallows. Shoyuta anxiously asks if he feels anything different. Yugaku says his body feels warm. But within moments, his condition worsens. He coughs violently and drops to his knees as panic spreads through the class. Yugaku's head begins to swell grotesquely even though the girls cover their eyes with fear. Shuta's eyes widen in terror and he is standing stunned. Yugaku gasps that taking the wrong vaccine is a rule violation. Shoyuta shouts that Yugaku can't die, but blood starts to pour down Yugaku's face. With his half-swollen head, Yugaku forces out his final words, asking Shoyuta to promise that he will end this twisted game. Then, in one last motion, Yugaku throws himself aside, and his head bursts. Shoyuta seemed to be in deep sorrow. The students shriek with fear even as they freeze in horror, staring at Yugaku's lifeless body. Shoyuta stands trembling and recalls their first meeting back in childhood. He had met Yugaku in class, learned they lived in the same complex, and cheerfully invited him to play after school. But Yugaku kept reading his book, ignoring him. Shoyuta teased him about his serious attitude, asking if reading about the stock market could really be fun. Annoyed, Yugaku told him to be quiet, explaining that the book wasn't fun, it was the one Shoyuta himself had used to study from. After school, Shoyuta asked again why he was reading such books. Wearing worn-out slippers, Yugaku looked up and asked if Shoyuta knew why they lived in the rundown Taiyuman apartments, a place that felt more like a garbage dump than a home. Shoyuta didn't understand, but Yugaku turned and said that someday he would join a famous corporation and become rich, so he could give his parents a better life. Shoyuta gazed at him with admiration, calling him cool. Yugaku asked if he wasn't going to laugh, calling Shoyuta a strange guy. Shoyuta laughed warmly, saying he never thought there would be someone as amazing as Yugaku in their class. Yugaku looked away, moved but unsure how to respond. Shoyuta then invited him to play at the tire park together. Yugaku initially refused, but Shoyuta reminded him that even their teacher said students should balance studies with fun. With tears forming in his eyes, Yugaku finally agreed. Shoyuta smiled brightly and extended his hand. Yugaku stared for a moment, then took it, and their friendship began, one that lasted for years. Through his tears, Shoyuta writes in the notebook, Rule number 6, taking the wrong vaccine causes instant death. Shoyuta clenches his fists, vowing to end the cursed game. As he turns to leave, his eyes fall on a photo of the two of them, laughing together on happier days. The next morning, all students make their way to school in silence. Shoyuta walks among them, deep in thought. For days have passed since the Friends Eater game began, and 8 classmates are already dead. Everyone knows they must keep coming to school to stay alive. Checking his phone, Shoyuta finds his status marked healthy, but the assigned vaccine is the left eye. He mutters to himself that being healthy doesn't mean he's safe, he could still be someone's donor. Everyone looks drained and afraid. Rumi sits sobbing quietly at her desk. Shoyuta approaches her and gently asks if she's alright. Nijima immediately calls out, telling him to stay away because he might be infected. Shoyuta sees the class in panic, fearing everything, and realizes that if this keeps up, none of them will survive. He raises his voice, asking everyone to listen. He urges them to trust one another and reveal if anyone has been infected. His words echo through the tense classroom. All eyes turn toward him, some filled with suspicion, others with grief. Ayato interrupts coldly, calling Shoyuta a fool. He argues that no infected person would ever expose themselves willingly. Shoyuta glances at him, recalling that Ayato is heir to one of the top schools in the prefecture, a brilliant student who often looks down on others. Shoyuta insists that there's no reason for anyone to hide the rules now. Ayato counters sharply, saying that revealing one's status would be the same as signing their own death warrant. The words sink in, and Shoyuta feels a chill. It means there's really nothing they can do. Now steps forward and asks Ayato what they should do now. Her voice trembles with anger and tears as she cries out her hatred for the game's rules, reminding everyone how Yugaku once tried to fight back. Shoyuta moves closer, trying to calm her down. Now continues, saying that if they keep doing nothing, they'll all be forced into the game anyway. She agrees with Shoyuta, they need to work together. Rumi turns to Nejima, asking if they should do as Now says. Several boys whisper about teaming up to find a way to escape this nightmare. For the first time, Shoyuta feels a flicker of hope. He thanks Now sincerely. Suddenly Shuta's eyes catch sight of a baseball bat. 3 delinquents enter the classroom, loud, rough, and confident. The leader, Kengo, with scattered hair and a menacing glare, carries the bat in his hand. Shoyuta freezes, recognizing him immediately. Kengo is the leader of a group of rascals and a skilled judo fighter. Shoyuta steps forward, telling him to calm down, but Kengo swings the bat furiously. The blow misses, and Shoyuta falls to the floor. Kengo shouts that he will destroy anyone who gets in his way. Fear spreads through the classroom. One of his gang members shoves several girls against the wall, saying they must act fast if they want their leader to survive. Shuta's stomach tightens as he realizes Kengo is infected. Kengo looks wild, desperate. He moves toward Rumi with murderous intent. Now steps in front of him, calling for him to stop, but one of Kengo's men slaps Rumi hard and pushes her to the ground. Now shouts her name. Kengo orders his followers to hold Rumi down. Shoyuta rushes to help but is struck hard by another boy and thrown back. The attacker is Jinji Terry, Kengo's second-in-command and a delinquent from the boxing club. Jinji warns him that resisting will only get him hurt. Shoyuta glares at him, knowing Jinji's reputation for violence. Shoyuta tries to reason with them, shouting that what they're doing is wrong and that continuing this way will destroy them all. But Jinji replies coldly, asking if Shoyuta would rather let Kengo die. Shoyuta hesitates. He can't deny that Kengo's infection has driven him mad. He thinks briefly of Yugaku, wishing he were there to stop this. Kengo steps over Rumi. Now tries to intervene again but can't reach her. Shoyuta calls out desperately, begging Kengo to stop and think of another way to save everyone. But Kengo's rage only deepens. He raises the bat and slams it down on Rumi's head. Blood splatters as she collapses, gasping in pain. The classroom freezes. Now, Nejima and the others stare in horror as Kengo kneels beside Rumi's body. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a spoon. Without hesitation, he pries open her eyelid, scooping out her left eye to use as his vaccine. The sight makes several girls cover their mouths, trembling and nauseated. Now sinks to the floor, weeping for Rumi. Shoyuta stands motionless, his body shaking. Ayato turns to him and asks bitterly if he still believes they can trust each other after witnessing something like this. Ijima breaks down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. Moments later, every phone in the classroom vibrates. A new message appears, Rumi Moriboshi, deceased. Shoyuta stands over her body, staring at the blood beneath her head, his mind spinning as he grasps how hopeless things have become. Lost in thought, his phone still in his hand. The screen shows his status, healthy, and his assigned vaccine is listed as the fingernails of the right hand. It's early morning. He lies on his bed for a moment, letting out a long breath as the alarm continues to ring beside him. Getting up, he steps out of his room and moves toward the kitchen for breakfast. His mother had already left before he woke up. Shoyuta thinks that no one seems to take this situation seriously. It feels as if everyone already knew about the game long before it began. He glances toward the television, where the screen displays a segment about ants building colonies. As the report plays, he reflects bitterly that whenever he tries to show people proof of the Friends Eater game, they simply ignore it. It's as though the entire world is pretending not to notice. Watching the ants on the screen, Shoyuta begins to suspect that whoever created this game is the mastermind behind everything. An idea strikes him. If he can locate the person responsible, he might find a way to escape this nightmare. But before he can think further, the doorbell rings violently, echoing through the apartment. Shoyuta flinches, his heart pounding. The ringing continues, sharp and urgent. He wonders who it could be, perhaps someone infected, perhaps someone coming for him, the donor. The bell rings again, louder this time. It's Yuki. Relieved, he opens the door. Yuki apologizes for bothering him and says she came because she needed to ask him something. Shoyuta feels surprised and quickly invites her in, asking if she's on her way to school. Carrying her bag, Yuki nods and admits she felt helpless being alone in the morning. Her tone softens him, and he agrees to walk with her. Yuki thanks him warmly. Before leaving, Shoyuta tells her to wait while he gets ready. As she smiles, she asks him to just call her Yuki instead of Yuki-san. Shoyuta nods with a faint grin. Inside his room, Shoyuta opens a drawer and takes out a small folding knife. He checks its sharpness carefully before slipping it into his pocket for safety. Then, together, they leave for school. When they arrive, the building feels eerily empty. Shoyuta glances around, confused, while Yuki points ahead. In the distance, Ayato is pulling a small cart with a box on top. Shoyuta walks over and asks what he's doing. Ayato replies that the box contains cutlery, spices, and cooking supplies. He also adds that he intends to use the cutlery to cook human meat when the time comes. Shoyuta jerks in disbelief, grabbing him by the shoulder and demanding what he means. Ayato answers coldly that he hasn't decided to cook everyone, but he'll use people close to him if necessary. He smirks and asks if Shoyuta came prepared. In response, Shoyuta quietly shows him the knife in his pocket. Ayato nods slightly and remarks that eating raw meat is dangerous, so he plans to stay healthy. Shoyuta stares at him for a moment, then offers to help if Ayato is heading toward the student kitchen. Taking the box, Shoyuta apologizes for his earlier reaction. Yuki also steps forward to help carry it. Together, they enter the classroom, thinking they have arrived just in time for the start of lessons. But to their surprise, the entire class is already seated. The atmosphere is tense. The girls glare at Kengo and his gang, who sit in silence. Shoyuta feels the unease pressing down on the room. In the corner, he notices a faint stain of dried blood, remnants of what Yamaguchi did the previous day. At 7:30 a.m., Shoyuta glances around and wonders who the next infected person might be. Before he can think further, a loud shriek echoes through the hallway. A heavy-set boy, Takeo Yugawara, stumbles inside, screaming in pain. Behind him, Yua follows, trying to calm him down. The entire class recoils in fear. Yua gently holds Takeo's shoulders, calling him the young boy in a soothing voice. Shoyuta and Yuki exchange stunned looks, realizing that something terrible has already begun again. Yua gently holds Takeo's trembling hand and leads him forward. She is known in class as a quiet, doll-like girl who rarely speaks about herself. In a calm voice, she reassures him that his pain will soon pass. Shoyuta notices her hand move toward Takeo's injured fingers. A chill runs through him when Yugaku suddenly asks if the wound came from the right-hand nails. Shoyuta quickly steps closer, asking if Takeo's nails were used as the vaccine and how they had agreed to it. Yua smiles faintly and says she simply asked Takeo to help her. Shoyuta looks at her in disbelief, asking if she really removed his nails. Sitting beside Takeo, he softly asks whether he agreed to it. Takeo winces and admits that he helped because she depended on him. Hearing this, Shoyuta tells him he did something brave, that it's a lesson for everyone. But when Takeo lifts his hand, blood trickles from the places where his nails had been. Shoyuta shudders at the sight. A boy named Hiroaki steps forward, offering to take Takeo to the infirmary. Shoyuta asks if Takeo will be alright there. Hiroaki nods confidently, saying he knows how to treat it. He is the class president, always the one who takes on the jobs no one else wants. Smiling, Hiroaki jokes that with Yugaku gone, they must support the class themselves. His words lift the mood slightly, even bringing small smiles to the girls. Shoyuta, too, feels a brief spark of relief. 3 hours earlier, in a room cluttered with figures and collectible dolls, Hiroaki was lying under his blanket, muttering that he was tired of school. He lovingly looks at a doll and asks her to save him. From downstairs, his mother called out, asking if he was expecting a visitor. Curious, Takeo went to the entrance, and froze. Yua stood there in her school uniform, her expression gentle but unreadable. He hesitated, then invited her upstairs. In his room, Yua quietly looked around and touched one of the dolls. Takeo quickly took it from her, explaining that it was a limited edition. Trying to hide his nervousness, he asked what brought her there. She did not reply and looked at him with a cute face. Takeo gazed at her legs and neck. Yua said that she wanted his help. She held up her phone, showing a message that identified her donor as a male student. Her eyes met his, and Takeo realized what she was asking for. Startled, he slipped back and fearfully asked why she came to him instead of someone else. With calm persistence, Yua placed her hand over his and told him that he was kind, that she trusted him more than anyone. Her quiet confidence disarmed him. She asked softly for his help, requesting that she needed his nails for the vaccine. She also caressed his hairs and lips. Takeo felt aroused and he started to sweat. Yua's calm presence made him relent and he extended his hand to her. She rubbed it with her breast and promised to be all right after asking for the help again. Taking a small tool from her bag, she prepared to remove one of his nails. Takeo clenched his teeth as she counted down. When she pulled, pain shot through him, and he cried out. Back in the present, Hiroaki finishes bandaging Takeo's hand while the others watch in silence. Yua sits nearby, calmly polishing her own nails. Ayato observes her with a sharp look and mutters that she's a clever woman. Moments later, a notification sounds about the 5th round's clearance. The next morning, Shuta's phone blinks with a new email. He shudders as he reads it. His status is infected and his vaccine is the kidney of Hiroaki Tanabe. The thought that he may have to kill Hiroaki shocks him, his body trembles. He looks around the room, searching for any other option, then leaves for school with a heavy heart. On the way, Yuki sees him and freezes when she learns he's infected. Shoyuta confirms it, and Yuki tells him there was someone in her neighborhood who once took a kidney from an older man. She adds that both he and Hiroaki could survive with a single kidney. Shoyuta thinks a man can live on one kidney. Calmly, Yuki says she has something important to tell him. Shoyuta looks at her as the train passes by them just like a movie scene. At the station she blushes, admits she has feelings for him, and confesses she has liked him for a long time but restrained herself because of how Kohara felt. Now she cannot lie to herself any longer. She asks him to promise he will survive today's game. If he does, she will listen to his reply later. Shoyuta agrees and resolves to find a way for everyone to survive without sacrificing anyone. In class, the atmosphere is tense. Shoyuta approaches Hiroaki and humbly asks for a vaccine. Hiroaki listens and, with measured calm, acknowledges that he is the donor this time. Bowing his head increases Shuta's respect for him. Hiroaki asks whether Shoyuta really believes killing him, like Kengo's act, is the right solution. Shoyuta replies angrily that he cannot do that. Hiroaki smiles and remarks that Shoyuta has not changed. He says, as class president, he wants to save lives if possible. Shoyuta thanks him and ponders Hiroaki a humble guy even if the class gets pleased with him. Then he asks Shoyuta how he is going to take out his kidney. Shoyuta suggests hospital surgery to remove a kidney. Hiroaki asks how Shoyuta would persuade a doctor to cooperate. If they claim the game forced them, reception will refuse. Hiroaki stresses that he, too, wants to save people, but the proposed plan is unrealistic and too impractical. At that moment Ayato steps forward. He says his family hospital can handle the operation. Shoyuta and Hiroaki both look at Ayato in surprise. Ayato explains he can assign an off-duty doctor and arrange the surgery free of charge. Hiroaki stiffens. Shoyuta asks why Ayato would go to such lengths. Ayato laughs and calls it a hobby, revealing the hypocritical side of those who mask themselves. He then tells Hiroaki to hurry and go outside now. They will catch a taxi to the hospital. Hiroaki's face shifts, showing a strained, fake smile. He steps back, opens the door, and when Shoyuta looks up the corridor, Hiroaki is gone. Ayato asks if Shoyuta will not pursue him. Shoyuta stares, puzzled. Ayato warns that if Hiroaki gets away, Shoyuta will surely die. The warning stuns him. Down the corridor, Hiroaki hurries away in obvious distress. Shoyuta follows, fearing this might be a kidnapping, or worse. He remembers Yugaku's vow to end the game and, teeth clenched, runs after Hiroaki as fast as he can, determined he cannot afford to die yet. 3 months earlier, during lunch break before summer vacation, the classroom buzzes with noise and chatter. Masaya walks in carrying a box, announcing that he has found something amazing. Inside is a small kitten. The girls gather around, their faces lighting up with joy. Shoyuta asks where he found it. Masaya proudly replies that it was abandoned near the school gates. He calls it unbelievable that someone could do something so heartless, adding that if he hadn't found it, no one knows what might have happened. Yuki brings the kitten to Koharu, who is reading quietly. Koharu glances up and says she isn't interested. Yuki gently asks her to help dry it off. Smiling softly, Koharu takes the kitten and admits that it's adorable. Shoyuta, watching her, realizes he has never seen her smile like that before. When he asks who will care for the kitten, Masaya quickly says he only picked it up. He has no plans to raise it. The class begins to discuss what to do. Ayato suggests they hand it over to the health center, but everyone stares at him, uneasy. The girls say they can't just send it away like that. Shoyuta proposes finding someone who can adopt it. Yua asks if he even has time to look. Suddenly Hiroaki raises his hand and volunteers to take care of it. He lifts the box confidently, but Shoyuta reminds him that his family doesn't allow pets. Hiroaki gently strokes the kitten and says he cannot ignore anyone in trouble. The class smiles, touched by his kindness, unaware of the truth behind that gentle face. Now, in the present, Shoyuta runs down the corridor after Hiroaki, calling for him to stop. He demands to know why Hiroaki, who once claimed he wanted to save lives, is now running away and letting others die. Panting heavily, Hiroaki stops near a window, turns sharply, and shouts. He demands to know who told such lies about him being a savior. His voice shakes as he yells that he has always hated Shoyuta. Shocked, Shoyuta freezes, asking what he means. Hiroaki says that since they were children, he tried to be like Shoyuta, tried to match his sense of justice, but every time, Shoyuta took the spotlight. Every time, he was the one left behind. His hatred grew with each passing year. Shoyuta stares at him, struggling to believe what he's hearing. He asks if Hiroaki isn't the same person who once showed kindness to others. Hiroaki doesn't respond. Instead, he steps onto the window ledge and runs outside. Shoyuta follows without hesitation, leaping after him. He never imagined Hiroaki could be so different from the person he claims to be. He stretches out a hand to catch him, but slips and falls hard to the ground below. Pain surges through his body as Hiroaki turns, smirking. Hiroaki mocks and kicks at his ankle, reminding Shoyuta that his injured left foot had once forced him to quit basketball. He recalls how Shoyuta used to play roughly in practice games, always trying to chase the level of his childhood friend, Yugaku. Laughing cruelly, Hiroaki asks how it feels to lose again. And if he fails to catch him he will die. Shoyuta struggles to rise, insisting that Hiroaki isn't the person he once knew, that he was the one who promised to care for the abandoned cat. Hiroaki's face twists with rage. He kicks Shuta's face frequently and shouts, saying it's the perfect time to tell him what really happened to that kitten. He explains that after he had texted the class group saying he would adopt it, he took it home and sealed it inside a bag. He already had a list of massacred cats. Then, in a moment of chilling cruelty, he went to the kitchen, opened the oven and put the bag into it and turned it on. He recalls how it moved and cried, and how he watched it without flinching. He liked the smell of cat meat. When he opened the oven the blood leaked all over. Shuta's face turns pale as Hiroaki continues, describing how looking down on something weaker than himself gave him satisfaction. With that, Hiroaki turns toward the exit, smirking coldly. He says his story ends here and walks off, leaving Shoyuta injured and helpless.